those videos before this one, those videos also deal with the subject of brotherhood. Now, I got a few messages from a lot of brothers who said that they had agreed with me, but they had, what had confused some of them is that they were not certain what area of brotherhood that I was talking about. Was I talking about a brotherhood in terms of a religious constitution, or was I talking about brotherhood in reference to being an American black man? I would have to say, considering that I was talking about both areas of brotherhood, it only means one thing. In order for any one of those areas in terms of brotherhood to be accomplished, you have to understand what brotherhood is itself. And so that's why I was mentioning those particular areas. See, because everything is principle. And as it says in the word, we war not against flesh and blood, but of principalities. So we're dealing with principle, the principle of brotherhood. I made a video about my accident and the white guys whose RV that I hit. He came to visit me 2 days after I got out of physical rehab. His name was Victor. And when we had embraced, because he was so happy that I had lived through that, because he didn't know for, I think he said he didn't know for like a couple of days if I lived or not, because when he was present at the accident, he was talking to the police when they were putting me in the ambulance. And while they were putting me in the ambulance, they didn't really come to realize that I had survived until I was already in the ambulance. Now, while I was already in the ambulance and they were dealing with the fact that I was brought back by God, he was outside talking to the police officer in reference of what happened. So when the ambulance had left, based upon his thinking process and what he witnessed, when he said that he didn't find any signs of life inside of me, and the people who stopped, and they, I think he said it was a woman who checked me for signs of living, and she said, no, he's dead, he's gone. So to him, I had died. Now, the only way that he came to know that I survived it was by way of his insurance company. And then when I talked to them, I got in contact with him. That's how that transpired. But when he came to visit me and we saw one another, we didn't see color. And when we embraced and we even cried together, you know, that was brotherhood. That's a humanitarian area of brotherhood based upon brotherhood at its core, I would say, and not segregated even in a intellectual sense based upon religion or race. So when it all boils down to it, brotherhood is based upon how we treat one another and how we look out for one another and how we're concerned of one another. Brotherhood is a genuine expression of love. That's what it is. It's not a racial thing, nor is it a religious thing. What makes black men feel as though we are brothers is the fact that we deal with the same issues because of the discompatibilities that the white race have produced for us over here in America, even though our own African ancestors were the ones who actually sold us into slavery. So I tell a whole lot of black people, I don't mean to be getting off subject, but I tell a whole lot of black people in reference to reparations. If you really want to get reparations from the right people, you're missing the target asking white people or this government for reparations. If reparations is owed by black people in terms of anyone, I would suggest you point to Africa, because it was these African so-called kings and queens that everyone is so proud of. Those are the ones who sold you into slavery. So if anybody on this planet owes reparations to black people, I think you should go talk to the African government, because they were the ones who sold us into slavery. Now, becoming brothers in the religion of whether it's Islam or Christianity or the philosophy of Buddhism or other areas of religious living, that as well has been a segregated perception when it comes to calling someone your brother. What I've noticed is, by my experience with studying Islam, I've studied Islam through the Nation of Islam, and I've spent a lot of time with the Sunni Muslims. And it was at one time that Farrakhan had suggested, the same as Malcolm, that the Islamic world needs to build a relationship between one another of different factions. But what I noticed is that when that was transpiring, I was currently studying with the Sunni Muslims. And when some of the brothers at the Nation of Islam, who I was previously, once they saw that I was over there studying with the Sunnis, after Farrakhan suggested that they go also to the Sunni Muslims to study and pray with them, they looked at me sideways. Like, what are you doing over here? Okay, you're asking me what am I doing over here? What are you doing over here? So are you really doing what Farrakhan suggested? Or are you doing this simply because Farrakhan suggested you do this, but not for the sake of pure brotherhood within the Islamic world, which is not pure brotherhood? What my point is, brotherhood in terms of humanity is pure brotherhood. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian. It doesn't matter if you're a Jew, black, Christian, Muslim. You know, you get what I'm saying. This is why Yeshua, when he said, my kingdom, my mindset is not of this world. Well, what do you mean by of this world? Those different sects of religion in terms of so-called brotherhood. He looked at as everyone his brother and his sister, in spite of what they were involved in. In spite of what religion they gave themselves to. So he was a pure spiritual man, and yet still he serviced everyone and saw that everyone was his brother and his sister. The same way when the centurions had came to him and asked, and was telling him that I believe it was one of his male maids in his home, and he was dying and he was sick and he grown close to this servant, and he asked Yeshua if he could come and heal him. And he had told him, as you already know, that all you have to do is just say it and he be healed. And Yeshua had told him, your faith have healed your servant. Your faith alone has healed your servant. So he didn't say that I healed him. He said his faith had healed him. Now, had he not seen even this centurion as his brother and his servant as his brother, he would have never had anything to do with the centurion, because he would have told him, no, I can't do anything for you because you are a centurion of Rome. Of course, who he did not agree with based upon morality, but he still did what is right. So what difference does it make? What religion that you associate yourself with, what race you associate yourself with, it doesn't matter. Just do what is right. It doesn't matter. Do what is right. And see, and that is one of the primary reasons why religion has failed humanity. Because a lot of people say, well, you're not my brother because you're a Muslim. The Muslim says to the Christian, you're not my brother. And the Christian says, you're not my brother. Everyone considers one another only brothers within their little sects of where they claim to be serving the Most High or God or Allah, whatever you choose to call the Creator. So people ask, is Christ's house divided? If it was Christ's house, it wouldn't be divided. And a lot of people don't understand that if it is of the anointings, which implies the Christ state of mind, then there wouldn't be any division. There wouldn't be any division. So to me, is Christ's house divided? No, it's not, because I don't see Christ's house anywhere on this planet. And this is the reason why I say again, the reason why I helped Brother Kenyon is because I embraced him as a brother, and he embraced me as his brother. So brotherhood means a lot. And as I said before, there is a strong, there's a strong distinction. See, brother is the title. Brotherhood is the action. It's the action. If I'm your brother and you can't call yourself practicing brotherhood with Brother David if you're talking behind his back, slandering him behind his back because you're so envious and jealous of this man that you feel as though the only way that you can build yourself up is to behind his back tear him down. You're nobody's brother because you know nothing about brotherhood and you're incapable of brotherhood. And this is one of the regrets that Brother Muhammad Ali had in terms of Brother Malcolm. When he turned his back on Malcolm, he said, my biggest regret in life is when I turned my back on Brother Malcolm. See, him and Brother Malcolm were brothers in Islam. However, the reason why it failed is because of the distinctions. Malcolm with the Sunni, Muhammad Ali stayed into Nation of Islam. those distinctions is what broken their brotherhood, because it wasn't an honest perception of brotherhood anyway. You go to Mecca, the Muslims go to Mecca, and they pretend to practice one whole week of brotherhood by leaving all of their different areas of Islamic sects behind. They suspend them, and they go for a whole week to pretend that they are brothers under the one God, which is Allah. And then after that 1 week, instead of remaining as Prophet Muhammad had wanted in terms of Islam, they all went back to their sects, their different sects, their Hanbali and their Shiites and the Sunnis, all of those different sects, based upon the viewpoints of different Islamic scholars. So even in Mecca, the brotherhood that they're practicing is not real brotherhood. Because if the Mecca effect was real, they wouldn't go back to their different sects. I'm hoping that this is understood. Brotherhood in the black community, everybody calls each other brothers and sisters, and all of that. That's just a title utilized because we share the same race, but it's their brotherhood and sisterhood going on in the black community. No. And even nowadays, the sisterhood in terms of these corrupted black women today is strictly against black men. So let's just say the sisterhood is against the so-called brotherhood in the black community. This is how twisted everything is. But real brotherhood is principle. Everything is principle. Everything is principle. So as the scriptures that I displayed before, it talks about when Yeshua had ventured into a village. This was one of the times of when he was reported missing for 18 years. But they said that he went into this village and everyone was living in darkness, chaos. A lot of dark things were going on because a whole lot of people wasn't in their right mind. But he went into there and he shedded clarity on the people. He went in there as a light, a vessel of light to the people. And he healed a whole lot of people there in terms of counseling them and talking to them, giving them sight, giving them light, clarity. He was a vessel of clarity and therefore healing and direction. He didn't go in there and select who he was going to counsel and who he was going to give attention to. This day, because of religion and politics, mankind and womankind can barely sit at a table and have a discussion without some conflict breaking out amongst the two. As I said before, there was a couple of brothers, this brother that I know, and you know who you are, sitting at a table with a younger brother, and they were going back and forth about the Jewish calendar. And this is after we got through celebrating what is called the Sabbath. So they're sitting at the very same table, arguing back and forth about the Jewish calendar. Like, who cares about when the Jewish calendar? Who cares? I mean, that particular information is not going to help anyone out here in terms of healing and direction. So it was a display of two people sitting at the table, filled up with ego, which was hate was swelling. And so they're going back and forth with this information. And simply because they have different points of views behind some information that someone who they don't even know wrote down. This book says this book says that. And as I said, the dangers of information is a dual component. Each information has a dual component. And whatever you give your mind to in terms of information, your perception derives from what's going on in your heart and the way that your mind perceives things. And when it gets to the point to where you're sitting at a table with someone and you have different point of views, you're never going to come to an agreement unless you understand the distinctions of information and what information could cause. If there's not anyone at that table that remembers that humility is key, and the root of humility is love and compassion. So as long as you don't allow your ego to get involved in terms of, well, I'm right and you're wrong, and if you don't agree with the way that I see things, then shame on you. Come on, Brother David, let's get up and go. You don't know anything about brotherhood. Because brotherhood implies, look, you my brother. You see this one way, I see it in another sense. We're going to love our way through this because we love the brotherhood. So let's sit here and go through this until we come to that one truth and that one perception that we can agree on. Let's get rid of our egos. Let's get rid of our greed and that lust to have to be right about every damn thing. Let's get rid of the narcissism. Let's understand that neither one of us are the Most High. We're just students. So what we're going to do, we're going to sit here for as long as it takes. But one way or the other, we are not going to leave this table hating one another. And we're also not going to agree to disagree. Because when you agree to disagree, you go your separate ways. And so you're splitting up the brotherhood intellectually, and yet still claiming to be brothers. Well, let's just agree to disagree. Because when you agree to disagree, then one person goes their way and the other person goes theirs. However, that leaves open this perception and feeling of a very silent animosity towards one another, because you didn't love one another enough as brothers to sit there and come to an agreement. Because when you're dealing with information, which is the same information that the Creator told Adam and Eve to stay away from, the knowledge of good and evil is religion. If you would just open up your eyes and see that, religion and politics, that's the knowledge of good and evil. It doesn't do anything but separate mankind. And this is the reason why the Creator said, if you touch, therefore consume, take in this information, you will surely die. Humanity, brotherhood, sisterhood would surely die. And this implies that the knowledge of good and evil implies a historical account on planet Earth that no one has yet discussed. However, the knowledge of good and evil being present is a recorded historical account that the Creator says this must never happen again. So stay away from that. Stay away from that. Don't eat of that tree. Don't consume that information because it's going to cause a death. And this is the reason why we get up and we walk away from the table. And we continue to separate ourselves as brothers because we actually think it's about us. We think that it's because what makes us brothers is that we agree on things. That's not brotherhood. We think that when we disagree on something, that makes us not brothers. Disagreeing does not have to swell up to hatred to the point to where you no longer talk to this person and you allow this hatred to build up inside of you, and then you say, he ain't my brother no more. Well, he was never your brother in the first place if that type of mentality was sitting up in you from the beginning. When you study the same book that says we war not about flesh and blood, but of principalities. Everything. So what is the war of principalities? When you sit at those tables and you deal with all of this information, love has to be the center so that brotherhood can survive. It has to be the center. And as long as you sit there and you love your brother or sister enough to continue to dig into this information and understand that we are not going to leave this table hating one another, even if we don't find the answer this time. I would love for us to come together at another time after we try to find our answers somewhere else, to where the next time we meet up, we can come to that one truth, which is going to help us maintain brotherhood based upon principle. So when, as I said before, when Yeshua went into the village, he didn't have a selection of who he was going to counsel, who he was going to be made free in their minds and in their spirits. He talked to everyone. This was during his travels, which implies he spent a specific amount of time there. And then after he brought light to that valley, he knew that it was no longer a reason for him to remain because everyone there was healed by way of clarity. The problem is today is that people don't understand the pure essence and meaning of brotherhood. It's not difficult. What makes it difficult is when you turn brotherhood into a religious and political thing, when brotherhood is a pure spiritual thing. It's spirit. And so, with all of that being said, I'm going to get me some rest. And everyone, I hope that this video was understood. And something else was mentioned to me of why some people notice my subscribing numbers go up and down. I'm not concerned about that. I'm not concerned about that. You know, I'm not the type of YouTuber that makes a lot of videos that make a lot of noise. You know, I'm not into a whole lot of current subjects in a certain manner of trying to get anyone's attention. I'm not with a whole lot of conflict and all of that. I'm not the type of guy who you're going to see on someone's podcast, because of this current generation. I'm considered boring, which is good. That works for me, because I don't like being in the environment to where there's a lot of conflict. Now, I don't mind being a part of someone's podcast if we are going to be able to sit down and really have a discussion. I'm not with people talking over me and me talking over them, because it's not that important. I see this all the time. People talking over one another, and it's just a bunch of noise, because there's no respect factor there. And everyone has to be right. Everyone has to be heard. I understand that. But at the same time, we have to understand, like what Sir Jiddu Krishnamurti has said. He said there's two forms of communication. There's a verbal communication and a non-verbal communication. Verbal communication implies I'm talking. Non-verbal implies that you're listening. And it works together, because while I'm talking, the only way that you're going to be able to really understand exactly where I'm coming from is that you have to first listen. You have to listen to what I'm saying. And then after I'm done expressing myself, then you talk and I listen. This is how we have what is called a conversation or a discussion. This is the only way that we're going to be able to not only understand each other, but to put our minds and spirits and hearts together to come to a conclusion that not only helps us understand what we're talking about, but the viewers understand what we're talking about. Because if it's just a whole bunch of talking over one another and all of that, I'm sorry, that's not helping anyone. Because from what I'm seeing, it's just causing a whole lot of animosity against people that you really don't know. Really don't know these people. And everybody is yelling and screaming at each other. That's not going to help anyone. We have to learn how to have conversations. We have to learn how to love one another in spite if we know one another, so-called personally. That personal love, that's not going to help anyone. That doesn't help anyone. There's love sitting up in all of us, in spite if we know one another. Proof is, if you're walking down the street and you see a brother or a sister, whether it's black or white, getting disrespected and getting abused, are you just going to stand there and let it happen? Or are you going to, hey, that's not cool. Now, type of world that we're living in is getting to the point to where people are going through so much and they're so broken and so hurt, they don't want to experience anything. And so sometimes they walk away when they see things like that because they don't want to get involved, because they don't want to get in trouble, or they don't want to be a part of any more experiences that's going to cause them pain. We're living in a world of a lot of people who are broken. I mean, even the people that walk around and smile all the time, they're broken too. So as Yeshua went into the valley, and by him not being selective in whom he communicated with, we have to become that same way within this society. And so this is the reason why he was saying that he was the example when he implied, I am the way, the truth, and the light. And none of you can get to the Father the God consciousness except through my example. See, when he said through me, he was saying my example. So what was his purpose of being here on the planet? To show us what a human being actually looks like by way of example. I'm not talking about race. Well, Jesus was black and it says that he had hair of lamb's wool. I'm not there, y'all. I could care less what race he was, because you want to know why? Because he didn't mention what race he was. They said he was the seed of David according to the flesh. The seed of David implies Joseph claiming himself as a Jew. But he declared himself the Son of God according to the spirit of holiness. The Son of God, the light of God, the light of eternal mind, pure spirit. Except a man be born again in the spirit, he cannot perceive the kingdom of God, the Most High, Allah. With that being said, I'm going to end this by saying, understand what brotherhood is and even sisterhood is. And understand that it has nothing to do with any religious sect that you belong to. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with any political party that you've given yourself to. It has nothing to do with that. So with that being said, everyone have a beautiful evening. And please stay human. Y'all have a good night. Peace.